This is a warning before we get into today's podcast. This podcast is based around true events and true people. For the victims involved, we've actually instead brought a new guest on the show so as to discuss things properly about this important issue.
It's the movie Fargo.
Now dig on this.
Welcome to Classic Movie Banter. Way, we're back.
Woohoo!
You know that podcast where me, that guy Brenton, and that other guy at the end of the table, Nathan,
G'day.
we talk about films that are 20 years or older. 20 years, Nathan. And we tell you, our lovely listeners, if those films are still worth watching today. And more importantly, if they're worth getting all your mates around on a Thursday night, popping it on, getting some popcorn, and just having a good old watch-a-roo.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. Don't you think, Nathan?
It is good to be back, Brenton. I'm so excited because we've got another guest on the show, Brenton. Look at us with all our friends. We're just so popular.
Another guest? Don't say that. Yeah, well, today, Nathan, we're welcoming Rachel Baker on the show from her podcast, Don't Be So Dramatic, which is excellent. Rachel, for some reason, agreed to come onto the show and actually suggest a film for us to watch. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us today. Hey!
No problem. It's like I enjoy the sound of my own voice or something.
Whoa.
Wow. It's like, yeah. There's a certain vanity to it, isn't it? It's like, oh, let's talk, just have our voices on the air for hours. Just, needs to be more of me on the internet.
I feel like if there was like a, careers day in school and like we rocked up to like advocate, podcasting as a viable career option, one, it would be a hard sell. But two, like, if kids ask like, what type of student should get involved? I think that's the pitch. If you like the sound of your own voice, there's this whole medium where all you do is just talk at people and they may not be listening. Probably not.
It's called a sales room.
Yeah.
Choose that instead, kiddo. There's more money in that. Like, I'll boot them on their way. But yeah, welcome to the show, Rach. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for giving us Fargo to watch. What a good time.
I mean, yes, of course it is. Such a great film. I was actually umming and ahhing when you asked me what film we were going to watch for this episode. It's hard because there's some great films that are like kind of in the early 2000s, which I guess don't really qualify for your podcast, but that's okay. We've got Fargo.
It's the only one older than 20 years. Like, yeah, is that like, was there a particular reason you picked Fargo? Or you were just like, this'll do. Spoiler for later in the show, I really enjoy the film. I just think it's such a funny concept, and obviously like the Coen Brothers are fantastic filmmakers. So, and I really wanted to watch it again. So this was a really good excuse. When you hold that power, it's like, yeah, I'll put on this DVD. It's like one of the 3 I own, so I'll put it in. Yeah. It's like, this is for work purposes. I'll claim this back on tax. So. Oh, finally. I get all that Fargo money. There we go. Mm-hmm.
Now, in case our audience didn't know, Fargo was released in 1996 and it was directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. I don't think I need to go over the filmography of the Coen brothers, but they've directed, some films in their day. They've done a few
shot
movies.
Some movies.
Yeah. They've done a few things.
They've made a film
of note.
One or two. Just one or two.
Well, yeah.
They were good.
They weren't very good either, No, they weren't really well received. No one liked them. No awards won.
Did you see Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
I did.
Oh, you both did? Mm-hmm. Look at you being well read. Is it good?
Yes, it is.
That's the most like hesitant yes.
It's funny, like I don't know, I feel like I get very influenced by other people's opinions on things. So I thought it was great. However, in terms of having female characters in it, I think there was one, maybe.
Oh god.
And so from a female perspective, not to get too political,
imagine having a female perspective.
Yeah, just it was a bit like love the concept, love the characters, but maybe just throw like one more female or like two.
After having seen it as well, and knowing that there probably is one prominent female character in that film, and again, like in case Nathan, you don't know the structure of the movie or our listeners,
it's anthology, right? There's like 6 things in it. Like,
yeah, there's like all kind of short films that are all kind of connected. They're all kind of Western. But I think the only prominent female character, the events in that storyline as well, like, where things end up, it was questionable, I would say. So I can understand.
I'm just going to guess that she dies. If I'm right, I get a cookie.
Spoiler alert, you do get a cookie. Chocolate chip. There you
go. Well,
I'm glad we're not here to review that then. I'm glad we got a much better Coen Brothers movie.
Thank goodness for today, because we're actually going to talk about a film that features a very predominant female character that Frances McDormand plays in this movie. But before we get to all of that, Rachel, we do have a question for you to start off the show.
Can I pitch Fargo? Is that the question?
Can you pitch me the movie?
Gentlemen, have you ever been in the position where you're not doing very well financially, but you don't want to tell anyone because that's going to be a bit of a bruise to your ego? You know, we've all been there, we've all felt it, and then you have a wife, which we all have.
All of us.
All three of us in this chat, and all hundreds of listeners have all had wives. Now, what if that wife has a dad who's really well off financially, and in your state, you don't want to go to her dad and be like, hey, I need some money, because again, bruise to the ego. So what if you were to fake kidnap your wife to get ransom money from her dad and solve all of your financial problems?
You're just describing my past week. I mean, like, this is just spot on.
That's where Sarah went. Oh. Listeners, call the cops now. Okay, cool. So there's a very specific scenario here.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a kind of movie where we see this plan try to succeed, or where we see this plan maybe not?
Well, because it's set in Minnesota with, you know, we all know that Minnesotians, as we all call them, which I've just decided.
I shall now call you that.
No, which we all call them Minnesotians.
Minnesotians, with their hilarious upbeatness about life. Because the film is set there, I guess it kind of is set up to fail, because we all need to learn life lessons that kidnapping your wife is not good. And so we need this film to have some failure in it, so we can all walk away thinking, better not do that.
Well, I gotta say, I wish I'd watched this film last weekend, because it gave me some perspective. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow. Lessons were learned.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
That is very true. Thank you for that lovely pitch, Rachel.
What a good pitch. I'm so glad as well you mentioned the Minnesotians in them, because, like, do you think this movie would work if this wasn't set in Minnesota, if it was like in a different US state or something like that?
I think it would be a bit less interesting. I think it would be a little bit boring because, you know, obviously the Minnesotians, I'm
pretty sure that's their name. I can't think of anything better.
Don't think it is. I just can't hear that word and
Minnesotans?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
The Minnescites.
The Minnescites. You know, I think, say if it was set in Texas or something, I think that it would just give the whole film a whole different vibe, which would probably be a little less funny. And, you know, setting it in such a location where it's so stark and boring and bleak, and yet all of these crazy things start happening. I think that is why the film is kind of, it works so well. So yeah, I think it was important to set this film in Minnesota.
It is kind of the whole point. The whole point is the premise of this, in the sense of, like, we're dealing with, like, extremely dark events and themes, but in a place that is, you know, so upbeat, so optimistic, let's say. And the whole movie is just that balance of that juxtaposition of, like, events that, like, you wouldn't pick in a place that is so, you know, optimistic, where people are so open in their communication and the way they talk about things and whatnot. And yet underlying it is this, like, real dark, I guess, evil that kind of, like, is undoing a lot of, like, that in that community, which is why I guess we're getting into, like, what we think of the movie, which is why the thing I love most about this is that I guess our heroine is the person that is you know, fighting against the darkness, and is the person that is, like, fighting for, like, you know, because there's, like, such a juxtaposition between characters, between, like, family values of one family where a guy, like, kidnaps his wife in order to gain for financial gain.
Yeah, real differing family values. I don't know how you spend your Christmas.
No, but then it's juxtaposed with, like, a pregnant woman who's you know, about to give birth in 2 months, is about to start a new family with her partner, and you know, and the values are completely different. You know, like, they aren't, you know, seeking a financial gain, or, like, you know, they're just seeking, you know, a good life for their kids. I love that about this movie. To me, like, even though this movie's really dark and the humor's, like, you know, it's quite dark humor, very funny though, I always kind of leave this feeling with my heart warmed, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like every time I
Oh,
watch
really?
Fargo, I walk away and I'm like, a bunch of people just died, but good on you, Frances McDormand. Like that was great. Like
Made even your cold heart thaw. Like, well done.
totally.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because like I love that you say like all these people are so much optimistic, because they are. Like Minnesotans like are famously like that. Yet like Minnesota in this movie as a state is so bloody miserable. It's the most dreary, like cold, just boring architecture. It looks like one of the worst places you'd actually want to hang around in, because it's just because obviously we're seeing it like in the middle of February or whatever it is, so it's just ghastly. Every frame you're just like, ugh. Especially for Australians as well. We're like, why the fuck would you want to live like if it's like that all the time in that kind of condition?
Totally. Well, I personally have never been in a blizzard. You know what I mean? Like I've never been in those conditions. I've never traveled somewhere and like, you know, I saw snow for the first time last year.
It sucks.
And it was the start of ski season in New Zealand. So it wasn't Minnesota, you know what I mean? But have you guys like traveled and like been to like bleak environments like this where it's
Have you been outside the country?
Have you popped down to Tasmania or
I was hiking in Tasmania like in December, like in summer. Like, this is like 5 years ago on like the overland track, and it was snowing. I'm like, what the fuck? This is summer.
That's weird.
Like, what are you doing here, snow? Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Canada in winter and hiked up like mountains that are completely covered in snow, but it wasn't like bleak. It was very pretty. But it was kind of bleak because it's so damn cold.
Yeah, there's like shit snow and good snow, and like this is definitely the shit side of snow. Where you're just like, this ain't like Santa's North Pole. This is like, you don't want to be around here.
The one thing that I was like weirdly thinking about in the film, which was so like such a silly thought for me to have, I was like, in those countries like Minnesota, when it's that cold, like what if you want to like look good for someone? Like you have to wear these big puffy jackets that like give your body no shade. Like what if you like liked someone like one of your neighbors and you wanted to like go out and like put a cute little outfit on for them and be like, hello, you can't do that. So it's all personality.
No.
It all lies on your personality, which is terrifying.
And it's so funny as well, because this is like Minnesota in the 90s. So like we're seeing hair, we're seeing fashion that is not helping anyone in this movie.
No, no.
That's such an interesting point though, Rachel, because it's almost like, you know, in the sense of like, there's so many ways to communicate with someone, you know, like there's physical communication and whatnot. And like with the absence of that, because everyone's just like, you know.
Looks like a marshmallow.
Exactly. Like, and you can't really move your limbs and you're kind of wandering in and out of places. You can't really get a sense of someone physically, that all you can do is kind of look them in the eyes. And maybe there's something to that.
It's funny though, because you mentioned all like everyone's like so lovely. I think this might be one of the best cast films I have ever seen.
Ooh.
Every actor on screen delivers 110%, right? Mm-hmm. Like even actors take like one sentence say the best stuff. Like
the performances are all exemplary. Bringing up Frances McDormand again, for someone that comes on screen, I think in it's nearly close to the 40th minute of the film. She's the main character and she rocks up like
she's not introduced
pretty far into it. And to have all these characters that are just like instantly relatable to a certain extent, given that we are dealing with some interesting characters in this. The fact that like the screenplay is just so juicy as well, like with how characters interact with each other, the plot itself and like the twists and turns it takes. And using like the dialect of, thanks Nathan, using the dialect of the area to inform like those characters and how they interact with each other. Yeah, I just think everyone's just like awesome. Like from Steve Buscemi to William H. Macy is just awesome in this movie as well.
Oh my God.
He's
a sweetheart.
He's fantastic at just portraying someone that is just like, as the film goes on, like is just crumbling, like all the walls, the world is just crumbling around them, and it's just so internalized, and he still puts on that happy face, but in his eyes you can just see there is an inner meltdown that is just happening in every scene. And then it's juxtaposed again by kind of I'm always struck by the wisdom of Frances McDormand in this movie. She's just so like quick-witted and smart and onto things and so good at her job in this movie, and she's just a powerhouse. For a movie that, like, you know, if you think of like Oscar-winning performances, because she did win you know, lots of awards for this role, you know, you think of like, you know, big emotional roles that, you know, the weeping, the tears, whatnot, that really attract the critics and everyone to go like, wow, that's real acting. But she did that in a role that requires her to be constantly upbeat, to be not so much like, I guess, self-reflective, but to be like always giving and out there. And to see an actor kind of do that and achieve something that is still like quite profound is kind of striking in a way. So I just think she's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting as a character, like, and I think it's why it makes the movie work so well, is because, like, you know, given the circumstances, especially, I know I can't put spoilers in this part of the podcast, so I'm really trying not to.
Oh, bite on your tongue.
Yeah, in the things that she kind of comes across in the film, like as an actor, you might look at that in the script and kind of play it emotively and like, oh my God, like who did this? I must avenge these people kind of thing. But it's very like, oh, I turned up to my job today. This has happened. All right, well, let's solve the problem. And I'm also really pregnant. So I really enjoyed it. It was just very matter-of-factly done, which makes it funny. So.
And she doesn't hide her pregnancy as well. Like she'll have morning sickness, you know, she'll be like, oh, can I sit? You know, I'm be standing for a little bit. Like the film doesn't try and hide it, nor does it try and make her seem like the pregnant character or something like that, which some film movies are guilty of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's just, I just love her. And it's so funny because she's so, it's wonderful seeing her in contrast to Steve Buscemi, because like, well, you got this woman just so in control of her job and she calls out her co-workers when they're not, and like she knows what she's doing. And you've got that juxtaposed against the antagonist who's just like inventing it on the spot, and he's more of a responder. So I really love their dynamic when you follow these two kind of contrasting plots.
You can say, in fact, you can say that of a lot of like, you know, like you can say William H. Macy is like constantly responding as well. You know, his character's constantly like on the back foot. Frances McDormand, even though like she literally is on the back foot for most of the movie, she's trying to solve what it is that's going on. Like you said, Rachel, she's so matter of fact. She's just going about her job, and whilst her career is like super important to her, it's like, you know, at the end of the day, she makes time for everything as well. Like there's a lot of scenes in this where she's just like living life. She's just hanging out with her husband.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so cute. I love that.
It's just great. It's just like seeing someone that's really balanced and like has a good outlook on life, has got everything kind of sorted to a certain extent that we can, I guess, presume, juxtaposed with these people that are like higher up in the social hierarchy, let's say, from a financial standpoint or whatever you want to say with that. And yet they just seem miserable and just like...
Everyone's miserable. Most characters are just in the shit this movie.
Except for the kid. The kid's all right most of the time until stuff happens and he's a little bit sad. But I think he's all right.
I don't know. I feel like you wouldn't want to be anyone in this movie except maybe Francis. Like,
yeah, that's a good point, Nathan.
But then again, even then, it's like I don't want to be any of them. It just looks. I feel like this is like almost like the opposite of an ad for Minnesota. It's like Minnesota. It's like Minnesota like tourism department was like we're getting too many people. Frankly, like
we're gonna have to tell them the truth. Oh my God.
Fargo's just becoming a hot spot for people. We need to get them to come out. Like. It's funny as well because like I love how like these characters are so like warm and electric, and they shine out so much in contrast to this cold, desolate place. Like I think Roger Deakins did an amazing job like making these people stand out in this miserable environment.
Absolutely, this movie's just gorgeously shot. From aesthetic, like you really get a sense of what's going on. You get the beauty of the landscape and the bleakness of the landscape. But like the storytelling, like the visual storytelling again is just awesome. Like there's a lot of scenes where just like, you know, we open with just a shot, and again like the screenplay's doing a great job, but like, you know, we know the character dynamic straight away by the way characters are placed on screen, by the composition obviously, and yeah, Deakins, he's a good cinematographer.
Maybe he might be a good one. I was surprised he shot this. Like, this must be one of his earlier projects, right? Like, with the Coens.
He's been around a long time.
He's around longer than us.
Just a little bit.
But, like, some of it looks physically difficult to film. Like, there's some stuff there's some shots in here where you see, like, a car driving through snow. And you're like, they could only do this in one take. Otherwise, they have to, like, blow all the snow back, you know? Like, this looks like a very difficult shoot.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that watching it. But yes, you're right.
I was like, how did they actually make this? Like, geez. Like, it just stands out so much as just, like, a work that had like a lot of effort put into it, you know?
And you know what's really great about this movie as well, just in terms of a technical perspective, is that, you know, we've had this great conversation about all these themes, about these characters and how well they're sold and how enjoyable it is. It goes for like an hour 40. It's like not long. It's not a long movie. It's really tight. It just flows really well, and it's over before you know it. But it's still satisfying. You know, you're not left wanting anything else. I think it's just it's a really good package. You get your bang for your buck in this movie.
Oh, thank God. And it's funny because there's a lot going on in here as well. There's not too many scenes because the Coens are sometimes guilty of putting in scenes that look as though they're there just for the sake of being there.
There is one scene in it. Where I felt that way, but I agree.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't say it yet. Jesus.
Yeah,
To be continued.
Should we just rate it then?
Hold that thought. Yeah. Maybe we just rate it and we'll get into spoilers so Rachel can reveal the scene.
I'm dying here, guys.
She's like holding her chest down and something's like racketing inside it. Like, I just want to open the lock.
You guys are really nice in that you put you do a segment that's not spoilers and then you put the spoilers in. Because if that was me, I'd be like, you had 24 years to watch this. I mean, come on.
I've still had classics spoiled for me and I get pissed off at it. It's like, because there's so many good old movies. It's like, you're not going to see everything, especially while you're young. Like, it takes time.
That's true. You think you're just better people than me.
I feel like that's Nathan's addition to the show. Like for me, like as our listeners know, like I just don't care about spoilers. Like if something's spoiled, I'm like,
yeah.
oh well, like I'll still watch it and enjoy it and it won't ruin it for me. Whereas like I think Nathan, like obviously, like you said, like you could.
I get so pissed.
If Nathan hadn't seen Citizen Kane and someone had spoiled it for him, like he would have just.
I would have flipped the table, man.
Yeah, you
would have thrown like the snow globe from that movie and held it at someone's face.
The pork roast would be on the floor. The wine glasses would be smashed. We'd have to end the show on a sour note.
Yeah. But here's the thing as well, I'm like really anal with my spoilers. Like I'll go into, especially with like new movies as well, I'll go into a cinema not wanting to know like who's in the movie or like I'm really rigid with that.
Wow.
Yeah. I like the revelation. Rachel's like slowly backing up. She's like, okay, you do you. Like,
I was literally about to say you do you, so.
oh, bless. Look at us all in sync. Yeah, are you like, how do you feel about it, Rach? Have you had like big things spoiled for you before?
I'm very similar to Brenton in that if something is spoiled for me, I'll still watch the film. I'm not
totally
too hung up on different things. I'm trying to think if I've had like an instance where I've really looked forward to a film and that's been spoiled for me.
You just don't feel excitement anymore. That's how you get away with it. That's why she goes to cinema to try and get that jump started.
For me, it's just about execution. Like, like it doesn't matter so much as like what happens in something as opposed to like, how it's done and like how it's executed and if it's impactful, because like you can hear a plot point and be like, that's an awesome plot point, and then go to a film or whatever it is. You could read a book, you could see a play, whatever it is, or listen to a podcast, and you could know that there's going to be something that happens. Nathan would probably be of the opinion that would lessen the effect of it, but I don't think so. I think it's all in the handling of how it's done, and even if I know something going in and I have known things going in before I've seen something, it can still hit me to the desired effect, and that's always just a compliment to the filmmakers or the artist involved. Yeah, it doesn't, and it's always more interesting, I think, as a discussion to be like that's why we kind of started the show. It's all about the execution, like that's the more interesting discussion as opposed to like this thing happened.
Yeah.
I know that's an unpopular opinion though, because I know we live in an age where, spoilers are the bane of everyone's existence, and fair enough. Like,
it's only a new thing, really. That's really gripped stuff. Like, people aren't like going into Hamlet back in the day and being, oh, I wonder if he lives throughout this. Like,
that's a great example. Like, let's get the chorus out at the start of the show and explain exactly what's going to happen in the show from beginning to end, and then you will see what happens.
Shakespeare didn't give any shit. So
exactly.
He's like, I'll spoil the whole thing.
Well, I mean, they keep remaking movies as well, and people keep going to see them knowing full well what's going to happen in the film. So yeah, like it's just about a different execution of that storyline, and obviously how different actors play the same characters. So yeah,
that's why you bought like 5 tickets to Lion King.
I still have not seen that. I still have not seen that remake. I don't think I've seen any of the Disney remakes.
No.
Oh, you have, right?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen the Disney remakes because why? Yeah, I have a bit of an annoyance with. I mean, I'm sure they're good, but I just feel like people of our age, the cartoons, the original Disneys, they hold such memories for us being young and watching them that now I'm just like, I know, like, do I need to see a 3D lion? Probably not. I'm good.
I've got Taronga Zoo. I'm set.
I feel as well that like, because like the animation studios are still like, doing new works, they're making the Disney animation studios doing like Moanas and Frozens and these new things that are like, new stories, new ideas. And then the live action studios have got nothing. They're just like, oh, I guess we'll do Aladdin again. No, I'm sure, like, again, I agree with you, Rachel. I'm sure they're good movies and people would love those. But I just want to see new ideas, like see Disney do something new and bring new stories to life, you know?
I honestly don't think that's a studio that you're going to get that from, mate. Like when it comes to the film industry.
It's a good point. I mean, like...
And even those Renaissance pictures, like Aladdin's not a new story. Like they took that from Arabian Nights. Like the Disney Renaissance pics are all adaptations. Like nothing new was done there.
True.
Well, yeah, it's that argument of like, you know, like kind of every story's kind of been told. It's about like how you tell it.
Yeah.
There is an argument.
What was Fargo's original one, Brenton?
Well, I don't know, because Fargo's very original, hey? And like I can't really remember something that is like this, you know, that has that kind of is set on such
I was saying this to Rachel off air. So you know how this opens, this is not a spoiler really, you know how it opens with like this is based on a true story.
It spoiled it for me when you said it, but...
Oh, I'm so sorry. Should we disclose this to the listeners? Do you know this, Brenton?
I do know this, but
It's not based on a true story. Like the Coens blatantly made this up.
But I always kind of like love that. Like I love when I found that out. Like, but I can understand that you just be like, oh, because I love that it like
Santa isn't real?
that. Yeah, well, exactly. It's kind of like I like the fact that they kind of just like bullshitting you. Like at the start, like they build up this thing that it's going to be like such a serious, which it is. It's a serious story, and then again, it just underlies it with like that comedy, that lightness that you know comes in.
Well, William H. Macy like doing the Oscar rounds, being like, this is a really like hardcore biopic of like Jerry Lundegaard and like his descent from like faith, like, and then Neckman, they're like, nah, this is a fictional guy. Like.
But again, like who does that? Who goes, this is a real story and it's totally not? Like no one's ever really done that again.
It's kind of weird that they did get away with it. Like,
Yeah, there was not much uproar, was it? Well, I literally only realized that when you said it to me, and I was like, oh my God, it's hilarious. But it did, for a while there, I was kind of like, there's a few story points that I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But because it's a true story, they're just telling the story. And so I let it go.
yeah. So you can't attack it narratively.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I read somewhere that like in the early 2000s, because of that It's a True Story card, there was a woman who like tried to find the buried money in Minnesota.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you know the story, Brenton?
No, I had no idea. That's amazing.
Oh, okay. So like in the early 2000s, Google it, listeners. There was a woman who tried to find the buried money because there's buried money in this movie, but instead they found a dead body by the lake.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, they found that instead because they were just digging for where they thought it was buried, and then the police got involved, and then they end up solving something that they didn't know was going on, and yeah, that's a result of this movie.
Wow.
Sharon, I think I found something. Ooh.
Oh no, that's a hand.
Geez.
Oh, that's really dark. Yeah, I'd never heard that story, but like it was a funny story at first. I was like, oh, that's funny, like you know, cute that people have gone out and tried to find the money, and
Neckman.
maybe there is just like this bunch of murders that have just happened in Minnesota, and no one suspects the place. Like everyone's like, that's a fine place. Everyone's very nice there, and
What was it like when Pokemon Go first became big? Like people were finding bodies or something like that?
oh yeah, like there was remember when Pokemon Go like took off
Yes.
and everyone like I remember going down to the Opera House one day and everyone was out the front going, "It's a Charizard," and there was like 100 people there. It was nuts. But during that period, there was reports that I think it was a couple of kids had gone, I think it was in the US, had gone off the beaten path somewhere and were in some forest looking for Pokemon, and they stumbled across a dead body. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Can you not wait for that to be adapted into a movie?
It's probably already happening. Warner Brothers is probably
I would
already...
not be surprised if Blumhouse didn't get on top of that. They're just they get the Pokemon rights to the IP. They're like, here we go.
I reckon that was the original pitch for that Pokemon movie with Ryan Reynolds. Like
Ryan
that they were
Reynolds.
So like, look.
So imagine there's a Pikachu, but then they stumble upon a body. We're getting so off track here. We should really rate this.
Yeah.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
I guess it's not a spoiler to say that my thumbs are way up for this. Like, I think it's a great time. I think it still holds up today. Like I said, there's nothing quite like this that I've ever seen, and I just love what this movie achieves, what it does. I like all the characters in this movie, and it's kind of endlessly rewatchable as well. Mm-hmm. I think this was my third viewing as well, and it was just as good as my first. So 2 thumbs up for me. What a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I bloody love it. It's also a good first Coen Brothers film. If you've never seen the Coens before, this is like the starting point if you want to get them and like see if they're your thing. But yeah, and if you like this, watch the other stuff. Watch No Country for Old Men. Watch There'll Be Blood. Just go on a huge Coen Brothers trip.
I agree. I like all of my fingers are up for this film.
You're waving.
I'm just waving 2 hands.
We're waving back one at a time.
Maybe even my feet as well.
All 4 up in the air. All the fingers up as well.
Like, Rachel, that's not how you rate things.
You know when you go to like a car salesman or something, and they've got those blow up.
I love them so much. They're like the woo.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you. That's what Rachel thinks of Fargo. Is one of those guys, they keep going down, but then they're always
blowy
going
man.
up. The blowy man.
It also reminds me of that wave that like Oprah does. You know, like when Oprah like walks out into a show at the start and she like does like the double-handed like she'll like wave her hands like
That's so weird
like,
to do.
like she's almost clapping with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oprah does it all the time, so it's how she made billions. Well, yeah, I know you're ready to spoil it, Rachel, so let's just get into it. You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh.
Where do we begin?
What do you want to say, Rach?
Okay. I've forgotten what I was thinking about before. Oh yeah, the one scene that I was kind of a bit like, what was that? Is the scene where we see Marge go and visit. She's in the Twin Cities and she has drinks with her old school friend who is mentally unstable,
Yes.
but you don't find that out until afterwards. That has zero to do with the story. I mean, it's a great scene and it's a fun little character that comes in for like a scene or two.
Yeah.
But it really, and that was a scene that I was like, oh, that must have happened in real life. So I guess they had to put it in.
I felt the exact same thing. And like, I've always felt that about that scene. And it wasn't until this viewing that I finally got it. I'm like, I had that like kind of like, moment. Because my interpretation of it was that the Coens put it in to show the like could have been like like we're seeing a lot of characters that are kind of just like content with their kind of normal like lives and being normal and that kind of stuff, and here's this guy who allegedly says he has all this success, and we see Marge just kind of be like, this is actually something I didn't want, this could have been like is kind of out of my field, which is even funnier when it's revealed later on the phone call that he's just making it all up.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag for me because this is one of the standout scenes from the film for me. Like, I love this scene. Like you said, Rachel, it's a fantastic scene on its own. And it always sticks out in my mind when I remember the film. But I don't know if I've solved it yet as to why it's there, but it's obviously like thematically there for like a reason. And if it keeps coming up in my mind, like it's obviously doing its job and it's making me think about stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure if I've necessarily, solved what that is for me, but I agree that it is kind of out of place because it's something that doesn't have anything to do with the immediate plot. And we only go back to it kind of once. And maybe it's that link again, like, because it's another example of like, I always think this movie's kind of about, there's a strong like theme on like family in this movie and success as well, in life. And so maybe it's a link to that with this guy that again, like it's kind of a facade. It's kind of this thing and he's kind of grasping at straws to live a positive lifestyle.
Also a lot of characters trying to make it, like they're trying to break out of the rat race.
What a pathological liar though from that character.
Jesus,
like
his wife's got leukemia.
I married this girl that was in the that died, and then like on the phone, oh no, she's well and truly alive. Like you should catch up for brunch.
Yeah.
Margie's just like, oh, okay.
I love how Marge handles the whole situation in the scene though, like when he comes sits next to her and she's like, oh no, like I think you should sit over there, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and she's like, no, like it's fine. It's fine.
Oh no, yeah. Like, I just don't want to turn my neck. Like,
yeah.
She's just.
Yeah.
Oh, she's great. My favorite thing about that scene is that like we see her like ask like for a really fancy restaurant and like she's trying to make it all nice and posh, and then she just orders a Diet Coke and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm with you, both of you. Like I agree, Rachel. I just love how she handles him in that scene, and like it's like he tries to kind of get the ascendancy in the scene, and then she just immediately when he comes around to like sit next to her, the snap, like she has like, and the character has a lot of moments like this where she has a moment like this with William H. Macy that like someone like tries to step the bounds with her and she puts them in their place really easily and like just straight away just puts that person in their place, and the way she handles that scene, but also like with a sense of openness and kindness at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's just really engaging to watch, and
also rare. It's something you don't see that often.
Totally.
If a character's like hard boiled, they'll always act pretty tough and you won't see them be like so polite. That's probably more of a Fargo thing than like a Marge thing as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That scene really got me because I was like, oh, because at first I'm like, obviously, you know, this guy's a bit unhinged and we don't really know his backstory or what's happened to him. But you get the sense that he's there with the ulterior motive of meeting up with Marge to try and establish a relationship. When it comes out, like, you know, that his supposed wife had leukemia and died and whatnot, you get a sense of like, oh, like, I guess I judged a book by its cover like that. And then it's revealed later on that you're kind of spot on. And he's just like this liar that is just like, and that obviously has like, you know, is very confused and is, you know, having, you know, problems and I think he's living in his parents' basement or something. And then we just never meet him again. We never see him again. He's just gone.
But there's so many like one scene characters. Like this movie's just littered with all of them. Like, do you have any like favorites that stand out?
I really like that scene in the dealership when it's quite early on in the film, that couple that are going to buy the car and he's like, you need to pay more money because of the
coat or whatever it was.
Yeah, the coat on the car, something like that. But I think like that couple that come in, they're just the dynamic between them. I just think they're such a like a quirky little little characters that like they're very well acted as well. In that scene, I was like, yeah, like these two actors are in it for one scene and they're just nailing it.
I love it when like the husband, he has to like drop like the F-bomb and it's like the first time he said it in like 20 years.
Yeah.
You fucking liar.
Just off the back of that point there as well, like it's that thing of like it's such an ensemble cast, and like for me the standout actor in that scene when watching it that I'm always just entertained by, and she hasn't got like any dialogue in that scene, is his wife. The way that she just reacts in that scene, and she at times is mostly agreeing with like William H. Macy that like, yes, we should probably get this coat on the car, like, you know, we're gonna have to spend more money, and the way that like, you know, she interacts in the scene and goes between the two men and is like, you know, on one side at one point and then the other side is like supporting her husband and being like, yeah, you dirty salesman, you. It's a great interaction, that whole scene, and and it really sets up not only William H. Macy's character obviously, but just the world as well of someone that's like trying to, again, they're just warring at the same time, these characters, but all they can say is like, oh heck, oh
yes,
yeah.
Come on, man.
What the Christ?
Like, until the F-bomb's obviously uttered, but again, that's kind of a joke in itself, like Nathan said.
Oh, it's so funny watching them swear.
I love when they're in the car and it's just a driving scene, and Steve Buscemi's character is basically doing all of the talking. And he's basically saying to, I don't remember the other character's name, but you know, the other kidnapper guy, and he's just sitting there like deadpan, and Steve Buscemi keeps going on like, are you going to say anything? Are you going to talk? Fine. I'll sit in silence too. We're sitting in silence, and he keeps talking about how they're sitting in silence.
Every road trip you've been on, just
yeah, I really enjoy that scene just because it's just so like, it just really sets the two characters up, their dynamic for you in such a simple way.
Even when you first meet Steve Buscemi, you kind of get that of him, like he's this guy just desperate for attention.
Yeah.
I don't think his name's ever uttered, but yeah, that character, it's established, he says that one word I think in that scene, and the way Buscemi reacts to that, and it's established that that's the one thing he said in like the 4 hours he's been driving.
Yeah,
it just goes back to Steve trying to play the silent game, but he just can't. He's not capable of it.
He just can't. Just that miserable kid in the backseat that just can't take it. And like, because it's Steve Buscemi, like he just looks so funny, this movie. Like he's got his like shitty little mustache and his thin little turtleneck. You just kind of want to give him a hug because he's just such a shit situation. Like, oh, bless him. It's funny because they're disconnected characters, and yet they have sex together at one point with like these two girls. So like,
yeah,
you know, like, despite the fact there's no relationship, there's something there. And then like, and at the end, Steve has the audacity to kind of like shout at this guy who's clearly deranged. They're like, you know what, fuck it, here's your money, I'm gonna walk away and not guard my back. Let's just see how this pans out.
Well, it is an interesting dynamic because I think it's established as well that Steve Buscemi's obviously been hired to do the job, but then this guy is just kind of around, right? Like he's someone that's like an outsider. He hasn't done a job with him before. The mechanic that works for William H. Macy doesn't vouch for him. He says, oh, I don't know who that is, I don't vouch for them.
He's great as well.
He's such a mystery. But one of the things, as this movie escalates, I feel like that character in particular is the cause for a lot of the escalation in the movie.
Yeah. Well, he shoots the cop and everything.
Yeah, from the kidnapping of the wife to the shooting of the cop to killing, you know, the wife at the end. It's just proved that he's like a total sociopath. And for me, like, one of the best scenes in the movie is actually the last scene of his between him and Margie, when he again doesn't say anything. He just sits in the back of the police car, and she's just trying to, I guess, understand the psychology of him. Like, it's a great moment, when she's just like, again, like it's such a nice speech when she's just like, there's so much more to life than just money, than the actions you've taken for just a bit of cash, life's so much more than that. I'll say it again, the juxtaposition of those two characters in that last final moment is just kind of, again, just heartwarming and sweet, mainly because as well, after all that darkness, finally the monster gets locked away, like he gets put away, and she succeeds. There is a moment that I remember when I first watched this movie and that final confrontation near the wood chipper happened. Oh, I was worried.
That's the only time that I dislike Marge's character. That is problematic for me in that she sees the car that they've been trying to look out for, and fully pregnant with her tiny little gun has called for backup and thinks, I'm just going to go and like see what's going on.
Let's check it out.
And then sees what's going on and doesn't even like go, maybe I'll just wait for backup. Is like it's just such a bizarre character choice to do that when you're like pregnant. It's just, which is kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. That was the only moment.
She's lucky he's unarmed as well. Like,
yeah,
he could have easily shot her, but like, and it's just horrific because like Margie vomits. She's not because of the disgust, but like she vomits from morning sickness when like she first comes across the crime scene. But here she sees this like a literal woman's leg sticking out of a wood chipper, and she's pretty stoic throughout the whole thing. Like, I remember when my parents told me a story about them seeing this movie in the cinemas back in '96. They said people screamed when like we saw that leg. Yeah,
we're so desensitized.
I know. After Game of Thrones, we're like, we've seen worse. Like,
Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad. There's so much violence, like
it just keeps escalating.
It is like, it's still pretty horrific, like to put a body through a wood chipper.
And it's like, yeah, and like of all the parts to show, like with a little sock, it's just like it's just so perverted, like.
But it looks so good on screen. The blood on the snow.
Yeah.
There's a few moments of that, like as this movie escalates as well, and towards the climax, there's the scene as well when Steve Buscemi is burying the briefcase in the snow.
Yeah.
Obviously he's like, he's been shot in the face and his cheeks just bleeding everywhere. But the blood's like gone all over his hands and his jumper and his coat, and it's still streaming from his face. And the figure of this figure of red just like stumbling through the snow. It's a strange like beauty in that image. Like it's kind of, it's horrific in its own way, but you're still like kind of entranced by it. And same with the wood chipper, you're like, oh, red on white looks really really, like aesthetically pleasing, like as a filmmaker, but it's horrific at the same time.
I just feel so sorry for the wife as well. Like, she just doesn't have much to do the whole movie. Like, she just kidnapped the whole time. Sadly, my favorite scene with her was like kind of when like she's in the shower and she kind of just kind of jumps at the bad guy and tries to run away, but then fails. Because it's just so ridiculous.
It is.
They have the whole house scenario, like, oh.
In that scene as well with the shower, before she jumps in the shower to hide, the funniest moment is like she's, winding the window to try and get it open so she can escape. And then there's this moment where she looks back at the door and like there's a good like 5 seconds of her just like doing nothing. It's like, what are you doing? Keep unwinding the window. Why have you stopped?
It's one of my favorite moments in the film, actually, is when she's just watching TV knitting.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And then Steve Buscemi in his mask just rocks up with his crowbar and smashes the window, and she's just like, this doesn't happen in our neighborhood ever. I wonder where this is going. It's probably not what I think it is. And then it just like, again, just all hell breaks loose. My favorite scene with that character is actually earlier on, which is the dinner scene between William H. Macy, her dad, her, and the son. And the way anytime she's interacting between her husband and her father, it's just an interesting dynamic where she's like clearly like obviously loves her husband, but like everyone in that family knows where the power lies, which is with her dad, which William H. Macy just like hates. He hates that that guy's got like all the power over his family, over his wife, over his son.
Well, that's why he doesn't want to ask for money in the first place, because he sees that power dynamic that he just sort of wants to play no part of. But it's funny because even after he executes that plan, he sees the father try and like still hold that power, and he's like, no, it's gotta be me, and then he fucks up, and then the father ends up going in and getting the money anyway.
Race is an interesting point, and it's probably my biggest question question in terms of the premise itself of the movie. The question is basically like, why does William H. Macy want the money? Is it a power play? Does he need the money because he's pretty desperate? It's like he's involved in some other. It's like he's involved in some other shady side activity, and it's a necessity that he gets it. But I've never like really kind of justified like why he kind of like is going. He's so desperate to get the money. Is it just a power play, or is there something else at fault?
I always just thought that he was just really like, because he works at the car sales place, which, you know, his father-in-law is his boss. I got the feeling that he was just really not selling enough cars, and so had kind of financially fucked himself a little bit, and then didn't want to tell his father-in-law, obviously, because then that affects his job as well. And so it was kind of like a pride thing of like, I don't want to tell you how broke I am because I'm bad at my job.
I guess that makes sense, because he's pretty shady even outside this plan, right? Like, even when like Francis is like, you know, because even though Francis is interrogating him, we see him like smudge numbers for like car dealerships that's just happening outside, like in his workplace.
That's true, yeah.
Like, he's just not a good bloke when it comes to how he acts in the workplace. I love that photo of him on the wall as well. Like, all like the employees of the month, you just see him with his little pose. I'm like, oh, bless you, William H. Macy. Like,
yeah, it's almost like he hasn't ended up in life where he'd like to be, you know? Like, he just... To me, it's almost like the reason... This sounds bad, but I think the character's pretty despicable, and the way that he treats his family and his son, like through this horrific incident that he causes, is pretty bad. I often think that the only reason he married his wife was because of who her father was. I've always just kind of gotten that feeling, like, from that character. He's probably like and this includes a character that's a total sociopath that just murders people endlessly, and we all know that that's obviously evil, but William H. Macy is pretty despicable and is probably like the worst character in this film. Every time I watch it, I'm always just like, oh, you just make my skin crawl.
You know what? I think that's exemplified the most when you see him getting arrested at the end, and he just squirms and he just cries, and you kind of see how pathetic he is at the end.
I've never watched the film and been like completely angry at his character. I think pride and ego do very interesting things to people, and I think that's what I kind of get. It's the small man syndrome, which is really taking effect in his character. And is that his fault? Ultimately, yes. But also, I'm like, I mean, it's such a bizarre thing to be like, I'm going to solve my financial issues by getting my wife kidnapped. Like, that's a bit...
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty extreme. I've never been completely disgusted with his character. I think he's just ended up in a situation that he is not happy, and that's sort of manifesting itself in bad ways. I don't know.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, what's sad about it is that he actually is like, he's intelligent to a certain extent. The way that he's obviously like brokered this deal and he's brought this idea forward to, like, you know, his father-in-law and his business partners, and they're like, hey man, like, it's a good idea, like, you know, we'll pay you out and it'll be great. And that's just not enough. And like, that's just such a clear, it's so telling of that character that, like, you know, he just wanted, yeah, it is such a power play. He's always after like control. But at the same time, like, what's kind of still entertaining about it, and why I guess we kind of liken to the character as much as we do, is that, you know, it's that Minnesota spirit. It's that willingness to always like think positive and to always think that it's gonna work out, you know.
Brendan's like saying this with like his hand on his heart.
Like, even in the scenes like when Francis McDormand, Margie, like, comes and confronts him, he's still like, you know, there with a smile, and like his world's crumbling around like in his eyes, and he's clearly like not taking any social cues, especially in that second scene, but he still thinks it's gonna like work out for the best. But yeah, you feel sorry for that kid, hey.
Oh jeez, imagine his upbringing. Like, yeah, especially after this movie, like, who knows where that kid ends up? Probably at the same car dealership. Who knows?
Yeah.
he just wants to hang out with his friends at McDonald's. That's all this kid wants.
Such a simple motive.
You know, you've had a burger for dinner, but why not go to Macca's and have some more? So good on you, kid. All right, well, let's get into some special segments.
Special segment.
Ooh, so special. Rach, you brought this up, and I'm so glad that you did. What two characters do you think should have kissed in this movie?
I mean, this is so obvious, but it just has to be Steve Buscemi and his partner in crime, because, like, you know, it just has to be, because there's the scene of them with the two prostitutes on two different beds. They're both, you know, having sex with the prostitutes. Couldn't you just imagine, like, once the prostitutes leave, they just kind of like lean over, give each other a nice kiss.
Oh,
Wouldn't that just make the film?
it would have warmed. It would have been a love story, the Romeo and Juliet of its day.
And then the fact that Steve Buscemi gets killed by him at the end would just make it hurt so much more, wouldn't
Oh,
it? They
the extra
shared
layers.
a passionate kiss.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? I picture the scene like when they rock up at they finally get to like their like the safe house, like where they're waiting for the money, and like they're out.
Just a bed full of rose petals.
No, like the wife's like stumbling around outside, and then they just put their arms around each other and go, "Oh, new home," and like give each other a nice smooch.
Like they've arrived at some like Airbnb for their holiday. Just
Oh my
like,
God.
well, this is a little cabin by the lake. Meanwhile, like the wife's just like knocking into trees, just like
Yes.
And they're like,
home
"Oh."
sweet home. It reminds me of like the Simpsons movie where like they go to their little like cabin in Alaska.
Yes.
It's
Totally,
just like that,
totally.
you know. They're clapping and the snow's falling down, you know, just like Bart. What about you, Brenton? Are there any other couples?
I think Rachel nailed it. I think that was the one. That was
Yeah.
the true romance in the movie. And I agree. I think there should have if we were to change anything, you just shift the tone a little to make it more of a tragedy that those two characters couldn't just ride off into the sunset together and get that $1 million and just, be free to love each other and to have each other.
Oh, it's the sequel. Make Fargo to someone. That's what we need. There's probably fan fiction out there. It probably
spin-off.
exists.
Oh my God.
I guarantee it probably exists.
Oh my God. Yeah, the internet's a weird place.
If we were better podcasters, I would have found some before the show and like and
Oh,
had it ready.
Imagine. That would just make my life.
Oh, that's what you read before bed. Just like, oh, finally, a real love story to get me
Steve
going.
Buscemi. I just want happiness for him, that's all.
Another one we have here is: did these characters learn the true meaning of Christmas?
Just a quick explanation on this segment to our new listeners and also to Rachel. True meaning of Christmas, we use that as like basically the theme of the film, the lesson of the movie. Did the characters learn the lesson of the movie? Are they better off for it? Do they ride off into the sunset? Do they understand? Did they learn a lesson from the events that transpired in the film?
I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone learned the true meaning of Christmas. Maybe Marge, because I feel like especially that final scene where she's like sitting in bed with her husband and he's gotten the big congratulations, your 3-cent stamp is like going to make publication. I feel like she's learned what matters or what counts. Like despite all this ugliness, there's some little light there. I don't know. What do you guys think?
William H. Macy's character's name in the film?
Jerry Lundegaard.
That's right, Jerry. Well, I feel like because he goes to jail, does that not mean that he does learn? Kind of, maybe?
I guess. Do you think it ever dawned, even before he gets arrested, I think it does dawn on him, like, the ramifications of what he's done,
Yeah,
right?
he's
Totally.
he's done goofed.
I would.
A big whoops.
Now you're starting to sound like a Minnesotian. Now you're starting to use the language, the dialect as well.
Oh, jeez.
I would argue that with I think eventually he could learn the lesson, but I think he never accepts responsibility though. Like he never like comes clean at the end. He's there trying to climb out the window, at the end.
Yeah.
I'd probably say that Marge is probably but I would say she doesn't learn it. I would say she already knew it, but it just justifies to her the way that she lives life and the way that, she goes about her business, that, that it's justification. I think it's especially I guess about there must be something in there about being like a new mom as well, or a first time mom, and like passing those lessons or passing the meaning of Christmas on to a child eventually and whatnot. That even though this is kind of a shit gig and I'm running about in the snow trying to catch murderers and I'm like 7-8 months pregnant, at least I've got family, at least I'm fighting the good fight,
Imagine being Marge's kid. Like she's like Marge's kid is like, so what was it like when you were pregnant with me? And she's like, oh boy, get ready for a story, kiddo. Here's a DVD copy of Fargo. Like, have a watch of this. That's you.
I don't think she'd tell the story. I think that she'd be like, oh, you and your dad, we just went to all these great restaurants, and they'd be telling the kid about like all the meals they ate, like all the best places they went to for food
and whatnot.
Is that what your parents do, Brenton? Like,
totally. They were like that spaghetti bolognese, Brenton, when you were 6 months along. It was great.
so it's funny because you bring up William H. Macy. This kind of ties in us to the next one of should this movie be a TV show? A new segment we're going to throw in, because I would love to see an older Jerry Lundegaard if they did this in the latter TV series of Fargo.
Yeah.
That's just they brought back William H. Macy. Because the only thing the TV show really touches on from the movie in the first season, because it's an anthology, is that buried money, where one of the criminals in the first season finds it and they use that money to fund like a criminal kind of thing.
I think, and again, I haven't seen the show.
Oh, Brenton, you need to live, mate.
It's inspired by it, right? So I think that Martin Freeman's character in the show is very much kind of inspired by William H. Macy's character in the original film.
Yeah.
But I think that's the extent of it. I may be wrong. Like, again, I think there's 3 seasons or something that have been released. So
they're amazing.
They're all different stories. Yeah.
I gotta watch it.
I would argue Fargo, the show, is as good as like Breaking Bad or like, it is so good. And each season as well, like it does something very different with it. And Brenton, you should really watch the second season because it's got Kirsten Dunst from the Spider-Man trilogy leading the charge.
Speaking of Breaking Bad, it's got what's his name? Jesse
Plemons.
That's the guy.
They play a couple. Peggy and Ed are their characters' names, and they're so good. Which, by the way, they got married in real life after they did that.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
That's so nice. Yeah. Oh, doesn't that just warm the heart?
But then, do you know the season 3 story?
I know that, what's his name? Ewan McGregor.
Yes.
Obi-Wan Kenobi himself is in it.
He's in the 3rd season.
Yeah. Oh, you do know this?
Yes, I know it. And it made me very upset with Ewan McGregor.
What are you doing, Ewan?
Basically, Ewan was married with kids, and his co-star
for 20 years.
In season 3, he has a young co-star who they end up in a relationship, and he leaves his wife for that co-star, and it was a big kerfuffle, and the kids were really like, my dad's a bit of a dickhead now, which is just, not very nice. Mrs. McGregor was at home, just trying to do her best, and Ewan was off on set just, actually falling in love, which makes me sad.
Yeah. It's interesting that happened after Fargo season 2 as well. You got a couple getting together, then a couple splitting up. It makes me only pray for Chris Rock in Fargo season 4. What side of the coin is he getting?
I had no idea. Though, so to speak, like I don't think I'm very much up to date with like all the Hollywood relationships or anything that go on. But like that sounds pretty full on. And again, poor kids in that scenario.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Suck.
Yeah, gosh.
But the show's great. Give it a watch.
The show's great.
I'll watch the show.
You'll be eating your popcorn, looking at Ewan McGregor, being like, I bloody know what you're doing, mate.
I'll watching season 3 with someone, and I'll be like at the end of it, did you enjoy that? They'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, well, I got news for you.
Well, Ewan sinned. And by liking the show, you've sinned. And you just chuck your popcorn on him.
Yeah. Do you like it now?
Yeah. I like Kirsten Dunst, all right.
No, watch it. It sounds cool. Like, again, like this whole premise,
amazing.
like, and again, like we said at the start of the show, it was like the first thing we said. It's like this community, this place, it's such a character in this film, and I guess in the show as well, that like, I guess people just can't get enough of that vibe, so to speak,
Well, yeah. Let's see what stills this movie.
Ooh, it's blinding. What stills this movie is a segment on the show where Nathan or myself, we pick a single frame from the film we are reviewing, and we pick it on the basis of it being interesting to talk about, if it's a nice piece of cinematography, or maybe we just pick it because it's a funny shot. The links are below if you want to check those out. That is still out on our social profiles.
It's very rare in this show we get a still that's genuinely pretty. Normally it's like of a character doing something quite stupid.
Totally.
But in the same way I brought up before how difficult it would have been to film some of this, look at this frame. It's like a car park.
So nicely shot, honestly.
Oh, of these trees. Like, it doesn't even look like an organized car park. You just got these random trees in the middle of it where this guy's walking towards his car. I think it's William H. Macy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and you can see there's like no foot tracks. I guess to walk over the line, like just to film something like this, like it would have been so tricky, right?
I think as well, like it goes back to the point of visual storytelling before, because this shot is taken in the scene just after he's had the meeting with his father-in-law and his business partner, and they've agreed to pay him out for his idea, but they're not going to give him they're not going to put him in charge of the settlement or whatever.
We're not
the
a bank,
is.
Jerry. This is my deal, Wade.
So it's this scene of this car park with this lone car in it and this lone figure. Like, it just sets it up so perfectly. Lone figure walking to the car. I think straight away after this is the bit where he's got his he's trying to scrape the ice off his windscreen.
Yeah.
And he just has that complete mental breakdown. And like, but again, like, what a shot selection to set up, someone that is like, in a brutal landscape by themselves, all alone, and everything's kind of crumbling down around them.
Poor William H. Macy. Let's look at this film's poster. Brenton.
Yes,
Let's look at this film's poster.
but is it art?
This poster. You know what? This is a poster I wouldn't want to own. This is a poster I'd want to have knitted. Like to say that someone
Yeah.
has done this. You know what I mean?
I think it's like a beautiful piece of art. Like what a great way to like get the tone of the film across. You know,
Yeah.
something that's like home knitted and like so nice, but is showing like this really dark material. So yeah, I think it's like kind of perfect, and it's a great way of kind of summing up what this movie's all about.
Yeah. A homespun murder story, apparently.
No, I agree. I think it's they did the poster. I don't have any other ideas which would be better than this. I think this exactly is like, this is what the vibe of this film is.
Like the film itself, it's really original. Like what a great idea.
You know, there's a famous Seinfeld poster of like Kramer being like that in that big portrait. Like, I don't know if you guys watch a lot of Seinfeld, but I kind of want a Steve Buscemi version of that with like him and his little turtleneck, like a big portrait kind of like frame thing of just him, you know, and there's a little mo, maybe with a dart. I wouldn't mind that hanging up.
Well, do you know that
be
you
a
can
mood.
buy a lot of Steve Buscemi products online? Like there's shower
Really?
curtains, there's bikinis of
What?
Steve Buscemi's face. Google it. I'm not even joking. There's
Oh my
so
God.
much random
Actually,
items.
I'm doing that right
yeah,
now.
do it.
That's just,
It's so bizarre.
God.
And yeah, it's so bizarre. The amount of items that have Steve Buscemi's face on it is just strange.
okay, Steve Buscemi merchandise. Let's see what Google has for us. Okay, on a thing called redbubble.com, there's a thing called Steve Buscemi gifts and merchandise. Oh my God. Okay. This is amazing. So I'll see if I can show you guys this. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. So we've got like Queen Elizabeth, but it's like Steve Buscemi's head, which is incredible. We've got some like Steve Buscemi pants
Oh my God.
that you can get there with him.
Oh God.
There's oh my God, there's like a skirt
There's a
with like Steve
skirt.
Buscemi's head on it there.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, you got like a little four-eyed Steve Buscemi on a shirt. There's
oh
like
no.
you got a mug with Steve Buscemi. You're welcome with a shirt with Steve Buscemi. Take this to the club, everyone. This is what you need to do post-COVID.
How can you say no to that?
Get on Amazon.
Oh my God, you got him on a pillow set.
Oh,
That's pretty great.
my God.
Yes.
Check out this shirt. This is
Wow.
bonkers. Okay, no, I think I found the best one.
Oh,
It's an
what is it?
iPhone case with like Steve
Ooh.
Buscemi and a little, like, love heart.
That's nice.
I'd put that on my phone for sure. I think what I'd really want though is like a sleeping mask, but like with Steve Buscemi's eyes instead of mine.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That would be amazing.
that'd be a worthy purchase.
Oh my God. Shut up. No. Oh my God. Okay, forget everything I just said because the best thing out of all, and this is what I'll end with, I promise, is that there is a COVID mask where you can be safe out and it's got Steve Buscemi on
And
it.
it's $15.88. That's pretty reasonable.
That's a bargain.
Everyone, if you want to stay safe and show your adoration for Steve Buscemi, this is where you gotta go. It's at redbubble.com.
If we ever had Steve Buscemi on the show, I'd love to ask him if he gets royalties for any of this. You know what I mean? Like if he's
Oh,
if
you bet he
if this
doesn't,
was
right?
his idea, if he just like came up with it and he's just like, I'm making more money than I ever did on any of my films just by allowing my face to be on some activewear. You know what I mean? I'd do it.
That'd be pretty great.
Not that anyone would buy it. No one would want me on some activewear. What am I talking about?
Would you ever want like a Randall kind of thing? Like, would you ever want some Monsters Inc. like merch of Steve Buscemi?
Probably not. I think I want the real deal. I want the real deal or nothing.
You
know
want
what I mean?
Steve
No.
himself? Why can't we buy him?
I should ask Steve that. You know, do you can I hire you for That sounds so bad. Can I hire you for the night, Steve? Who is this?
He's just really low for cash these days, though. Oh no.
I'll do anything.
Oh, maybe we should move on to some title talk.
Ooh, it's the title.
Was Fargo in the movie Fargo?
Yeah. Is it?
Yes.
They name drop it at the start.
I thought that was a trick question. I was very nervous to answer.
He's like, was it?
I thought you were going to be like, wrong.
Well, it's funny because like Fargo's in North Dakota. It's not even in Minnesota. It's like right on the border.
Yeah.
And yet they still share this. And like I was reading that like the people who actually live in Fargo don't really speak with that Minnesotan kind of accent. Like
Oh.
Really?
you get all these tourists like flood in and they have to like put it on sometimes.
Why is Fargo mentioned at the start of Fargo? Because I can't remember the line.
Because the murders literally happen in Fargo. What's the name of the town that starts with B and it's got the guy with the axe as like its statue?
I can't remember. Here,
I read a fact that the Coen Brothers called this movie Fargo because they were originally going to call it what that town was called.
Yeah.
And they thought just the name Fargo sounded better.
It does.
it's called Brainerd.
Brainerd.
Oh, Brainerd.
I don't think I'd watch a film called Brainerd and enjoy it as much.
Yeah, maybe the only reason we like this movie because it's called Fargo. If it was called Brainerd, yeah, like no one, thumbs down. No one wants that.
No, it's a strange word.
Brainerd. I'll
Sounds
keep
like
saying
Squidward with like less work.
Oh, Brainerd. Let's go down to Brainerd.
I'm from Brainerd.
Had this wild weekend in Brainerd last week. Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine going into like a town, like a small town you're visiting, and there's like that like a lumberjack statue at the front? I'd be it's a little bit disconcerting.
I don't know if that probably is like a real landmark.
Probably is really there, isn't it? Yeah.
But maybe it was just made for the film. Maybe they just like needed, that was in the script and someone made it. So it'd be funny if how people like keep props and things, if like that was in someone's backyard.
Just this giant guy.
Just so out of place.
And someone just goes, ugh, Brainerd.
Guys, who wants to come to my place for a barbecue? Brenton, get rid of the lumberjack statue. No one likes it. It's creepy.
Please change out of the costume. It's not helping.
I just imagine that you would sit on his shoulder in your backyard with just like a drink or something, just pondering life.
Me on the lumberjack shoulder with a glass of Merlot and the Steve Buscemi eye mask on. It's like, hey guys, how's it going?
That's a look.
Welcome to my palace.
You guys been to Brainerd? Let's go.
Let's pass it to the people.
Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
If you guys head on over to the Tomato Meter, Fargo's got an audience score of 93% with a critics rating of 94%. So
Wow.
Pretty high.
it's pretty high. Pretty,
Wow.
universally adored.
Yes.
Well, not universally, Brenton, as we'll soon get into. Tell you what though, it made money. Cost $7 million to make and made 60, so the Coens are rolling in it.
Oh my goodness.
Rolling in what?
Fargo. they're in some snow patch, just
I
making
was
snow
going to say
angels.
Steve Buscemi products, but Fargo's a good answer as well.
Probably. Robert Roten from the Laramie Movie Scope, he liked it, everyone. He gave it 10 out of 10. He said, I could have done without the blood, including a scene with the person being fed into a wood chipper, but the comedy is hilarious.
Oh my God. Don't watch the film then. That's what it's about.
It's exclusively blood.
Let's show murders, but guys, no blood, because that would just not be nice to look at.
But it's still got a 10 out of 10. He still gave it a 10
He
out
still
of 10.
is
It
like,
wasn't enough to,
even so.
It's like perfect score. Oh. But like, I don't get that. Like, honestly, like, I've never seen a movie outside maybe like Saw, where like the blood is that gratuitous. Like, it really dampens the experience. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
And even in Saw, I mean, that's again what the film is.
That's what you're in there for.
Yeah, if you're like, could have done without the blood. Yeah. It's
Yeah, like, maybe without the blood for Saw, like, still 10 out of 10.
Could you imagine this, like, I don't know, if some an alternate universe where, like, to get a rating for films to go out, like, they just had to, like, get rid of all the blood? Like, there was just no blood. It was just kind of like,
jeez.
maybe they just turned it blue or something. Like, we just, like, turned it a different color so it wasn't.
That is a real life thing, though, with the MPAA in America.
Yeah, that's right. People have weird ratings issues that they're like, oh, there's too much blood, or the blood's too red, or the blood needs to be more.
Yeah.
It's too maroon. It looks too dark. It looks too real.
It's just this guy, Robert Rotten. He's on the board. Just this one guy can't handle the side
He's
of it.
running the show. Eric Henderson also gave it a positive review from Slant Magazine and said, gave it 4 out of 4. Oh, gosh. Do you have to
He
be
said the
a
word!
Minnesotan to really get Fargo?
A Minnesotan.
A Minnesotan. So we added a...
There you go.
Minnesotian.
I like yours better, Rachel.
Thank you.
A Minnesotian.
So do I.
You know, it just rolls off the tongue. Do you have to be a Minnesotan to really get Fargo? Well, I don't know. I'm going to say that I think I got it.
I think the reverse is in play. I would be interesting to see if, because imagine if you're from Minnesota, right? This would just seem so normal for you. Like, the accents wouldn't stand out, right? So it'd be interesting to see what they thought of this movie.
Yeah. If it was like hamming up their accents and they were like, oh, that's annoying.
You know when you see like those Aussie films where like the Aussie accent's really played up and you're like, you know, you're just like, this ain't us. Like, I wonder if they feel that.
Yeah, maybe. But I agree. I don't think you have to be a Minnesotian to get this film. Maybe we were all Minnesotians in a past life and that's why we all get it.
Maybe.
There's a bit of Minnesota in us all.
That's what should have been on the poster. It's like a little like log line. Just like, there's a little Minnesota in us all.
So Richard has written, all attitude and low aptitude. Its function is to italicize the Coens' giddy contempt towards people who talk and think Minnesotan.
Jeez.
I don't know if Richard has some qualms with the Coen brothers.
And he wrote this review for Time magazine as well, so this is being read.
And it says top critic next to his name.
Maybe Time just doesn't sell well in Minnesota. Like there's something behind that.
So an anonymous reviewer on the Rotten Tomatoes gave this half one star, and said, not a true story despite what it says in the beginning. Half a star. Okay, Rachel, you said at the start of the show that Nathan, spoiler, unfortunately told you that this was in fact not a true story. Did it ruin the film enough?
It didn't ruin the film at all. It was kind of like, I just feel like all of these people that are so hung up on the fact that they really pulled a ruse on us all and they feel offended by that. I just think that there's some deeper issues going on there, you know? Like, let's sit down and have a chat. Like, why did that offend you so much? That's hilarious. The fact that I've gone so long liking the film and not knowing that it wasn't a true story is hilarious. Like, they got me. They really got me. And so I would 100% watch the film again and probably find it more hilarious. Yeah.
Also, the TV show does that too. Like the TV show opens every season with that.
Every episode opens with it.
They all can't be true. One of them's got to be telling fibs. Like,
And the fact that they don't put their name on it as well, like, what's that about?
it's probably like one of the Coens just writing it. They're like,
Yeah.
we should have told the truth. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, Frances is bitter.
No, it was probably
She's
Frances.
like, fuck you, Joel.
Just to get back at her husband, just like.
Benedict A gave it 3.5 stars and wrote, I thought it would be an amazing crime movie. I'm so disappointed, but it's not that bad at all. 3.5 out of 5.
I feel like if you're so disappointed, that's a really high rating for something that really disappointed you.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed. 3.5 stars.
Well, I remember I first watched this movie in my first year of university and doing like a film subject, and I fell in love with it. So I immediately showed my friends who like weren't who like doctors and lawyers and they're studying all this other stuff, and like we all watched it together, like the 5 of us, and none of them liked it except me
Interesting.
because they thought it was going to be a crime movie.
Oh, okay.
That is interesting.
So I can see people going into this and being like, okay, here we go for this, like, you know, No Country for Old Men kind of thing, and they're getting this instead.
That is a good point.
What gave them the impression though that it was going to be? Was it just the start of the film that it opened with like a, you know, the serious like title card of like, this is a true story, it's a crime story, a murder story, and then we go in and it's this wacky kind of off the wall.
I guess also true crime is so prevalent and people have such expectations for that genre.
Yeah, but I guess like if I'm going to watch something and I know it's directed by the Coen Brothers, I just know that I have to like expect the unexpected. You know what I mean? I don't think any one of their films is like similar to the other. Like they just go all over the place. You know, like you watch Hail Caesar and then you watch like, well, we did Barton Fink, or you watch this, or you watch Buster Scruggs or Inside Llewyn Davis. Like they're all over the place. No Country for Old Men. Like
No.
there's no consistency really there.
Yeah, like a small town vibes.
They do love their small towns, yeah.
This last one is a YouTube comment from 4 years ago. JDM Caesar. No lie. Sophomore year in college, our criminal justice teacher made us watch this and file police reports on all the crimes in the movie. It was our final for that course. Only in America. Lol.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
I love that. Bless them.
It'd be really funny if you failed the subject because you made the same choice as like Margie's partner. How they're like, oh yeah, man, like I just filed to do a plate check on a car.
Yes, DLR, yeah. That conversation in the film is so funny as well when she's like, I think you're doing some bad police work there. And he just takes it so well. Yeah. And he's like,
yeah, it's so good.
I'm just going to use that in the house now, you know? I think there's some chores that haven't yet been done. Like, just with that same tone.
Exactly. It's like that. I appreciate
You're still
the
fucking up.
Try harder next time. I think there's something you missed, you know?
I probably am, yeah. That was Fargo. We went to
journey.
Fargo.
That was Fargo.
Would you ever want to go to Fargo?
Yeah, I would. I'd want to go check it out, see what all the fuss is
It'd be
about.
like a stopover on the way to somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the most I'll do. We'll do a little road trip
Just
through
pop on
the
in.
Dakotas.
Yeah.
Is Steve here? We got his shirts. So.
It'd be funny if he was. If he just stopped in every now and then. He's like in some pub. Hey guys,
I was in a film.
I come here every week, once a week. I'm the talk of the town.
He's just like selling singlets, like a little like lemonade stand on the road.
Oh,
What happened, Steve?
And it's got the, you know, like the box, which is like the good faith box where, you know, when they sell fruit on the side of the road and no one's minding the fruit, so they trust that you'll put the money in. Steve's got one of those.
Absolutely. But that was Fargo. So let us know, lovely listeners, what you thought of Fargo. Get onto us on the socials, on the Instagram, on the Twitter, on the YouTube comments, or even just send us an email. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a wild ride. Thank you for not only suggesting the film, but coming on and agreeing to talk to us. If any of the lovely listeners want to hear more of what you do, how can they do that? Where would they go?
So you can find my podcast, Don't Be So Dramatic, on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It's just Don't Be So Dramatic. Type it in. There's my face on the cover. Not that you know what I look like because this is a podcast.
You'll know you found the right one when you see my face.
Yeah, so you can find my podcast there. I guess if you want to look me up on Instagram, my Instagram's rachel.lauren.baker. I post podcast stuff there as well because I'm not as diligent at having a whole separate podcast Instagram because
got lives to live, you know.
I'd rather be you because we have a podcast Instagram page and we just have no lives. It's just really sad, to be honest. It's like, hey guys, what's going on?
Slide into my DMs, please.
Thanks again, Rachel, and to our lovely listeners. It's really worth checking out her work.
Also, if you really love hearing Aussie voices as well, definitely go on for that. I love the interviews there. So many people you must have kidnapped.
Yes, I did. And that's why I chose Fargo as the film.
Of course.
I'm
so well equipped.
I'm
How did you
leaving
learn?
little Easter eggs to be like, where's Mark Morrissey? He's in my basement. I don't know why you guys haven't picked that up yet.
You know how that one criminal justice class played Fargo for like kids to like, you know, put in like reports? I reckon they should just play this episode of the podcast and hopefully by the end they'll realize who the kidnapper is.
It was Rachel.
It was Rachel all along.
You'll see us next week and you'll probably see Rachel in prison. Like, you know, we'll find out how it goes.
Maybe.
Keep your eyes peeled on the news.
I'm sneaky.
See you next week.